that's where it comes into play or into a variation. For some people who have very, very intense problems, and they can't just sit back and sing about it for a moment and feel better. And some people their job might be to look at problems and figure out how to solve them, and they can't just say, oh well, just smile and it'll go away. And so it's still truthful, but there are different ways that principle is going to be reached in other people's lives. And in other words, there's another aspect that can be interpreted or learned through, which is that even when there are unhappy events, kind of like what I described, or when your job is to fight crime or something like that, that there is a small sliver of something good there, a little bit of something good, and as well you can focus on that, but it's not to say that trick yourself and say what's bad is good anyway and is happy, and just like blind yourself to the raw feeling, which oftentimes is very stressful. But there's basically, when it goes away from being able to just laugh it off, there's an aspect of control over ourselves that is developed by learning how to navigate that situation and actually take control, rather than just having a response or reaction through emotion, whether that is feeling a certain way and being sad, or simply laughing it off. That there's an intellectual method of building, kind of like with Lego blocks, of maybe not fixing the situation, but of mending what it means to the individual. And when that is achieved, usually the problem is not as bad. And you can always say there's something worse. And then, but that variance is when, well, what about that guy that says whatever you say is worse for you, that could be, what about the guy or the girl that's having that? What do they say? And does it keep going? And there's always an interplay, but eventually it's a balance between just being positive and being smart enough to know not to trick yourself, but to how to take control and what can be done, and the difference between what can be done and what can't be done. And if there's nothing that can be done, then you can't worry about it because it won't change anything. And if there is something that can be done, then you can't just sit back and laugh it off, because the problem's going to come back over and over again. So it's a continual learning experience, and that is the basic interplay, whereas people will either say just be happy regardless. The plane's crashing, we'll just laugh. It's not going to help. Unless, again, there's nothing that could be done, which in that case, but say you could take control of the plane and guide it, and then you don't have to just laugh it off. You can be very intensely, scared and crash land and save everybody or save yourself. Well, that's another outcome, and that's another reality that we have access to in probably the majority of the situations, because even the ones where something happens to the body and doctors tell us one thing, apparently a lot of the time it's not like that, and you can find other options, and they don't like to tell people that. And with finance and things like that, it's very difficult, but there's often another way, and usually it has to do with the mind and mentality. And this goes into a whole bunch of other stuff about basically that there is technology that could fix everything, but if that happened, we wouldn't learn how to overcome that mental aspect. And it's kind of like using a GPS, and it tells you with the voice to turn left or turn right. And some people drive every day, and the GPS breaks, and they don't know how to get there anymore because they've been using it. And I do this sometimes with Google searching when I forget a fact or a word definition, and I search it instantly. But if you sit there and go, no, I need to make my brain work and get stronger, which is how it works, and you fight for the memories, you'll go, oh, this is what it means, and these memories come back, and that natural process is stressful, but it makes a person smarter and stronger. And so there's that interplay. It's basically about free will, whether we're going to use our free will to shape the situation and shape our role, or whether it's going to shape us and turn us into a product of reality.
Okay. And what is going to happen with the planet, with Earth? What going to happen with that everything?
So what is going to happen with the Earth?
In your point of view?
A lot of things. The most easy way to describe this is that just like I described how everyone has this basic option, a duality between one and another of free will or automation where we don't have free will and we're dominated by events, feelings basically, or whether we choose how we're going to feel and take control from a spiritual aspect beyond brain chemicals and beyond objects of what we physically do, but how we feel spiritually. And so there's an interplay in a person's life that's a spectrum of how that's going to play out and the options that they have. Every person has that interplay of at least two. Then you have a variety of situations where there are interplays of where and how that's going to be experienced in a variety of tests or problems or however that's going to be experienced in any given person's experience or life. And so the strange thing is that in that sense, the easiest way to describe it is that every possible opportunity, every possible outcome will be achieved and explored in what people describe as the shift of consciousness or the event or the shift of the ages or the unveiling or the apocalypse or whatever people want to call it. And it's that the possibilities in a person's conscious mind of various realities that we're connected to all have to come together back to one, which is what it was in the beginning before this event happened that splayed time out into multiple realities that are out of sync with each other. So we're kind of not communicating with our other selves. And the way back to that is that all the possibilities, it's like you have the 5 colors or a color wheel, and you have the basic colors. You can mix each one and make thousands to millions of colors, depending on if you start mixing the mixes in between them. So the realities are like that, and there's apparently 9 separate realities, and our consciousness exists separately in each of them, or at least to a certain degree for the amount of the population. And in order to recognize ourselves as the one or the original that all of those came from and will have to combine back to, we have to examine the possibilities between all of them. And it's not as easy as you think. It's not as if a day will replay and everything will be different in that day that replays and it will replay 1,000 million times, but it's that the information that's combined in those different possible experiences that would have that opportunity of shaping our consciousness and giving us the chance to step up, experiences that are that powerful that would shift every event that you could imagine, the most powerful of those experiences will happen. For those who are geared towards low consciousness, they're going to attract very intense, stressful, and possibly violent types of experiences, kind of like animals. And those types of people are here in largely the cities and the largely populated areas, and if a disruption occurs in what we consider to be normal now, the people do not know how to feed themselves and take care of themselves, and it's a massive billion-dollar infrastructure all over the world that pumps food, oil, gasoline, water into people and pumps poop and pee and dead bodies and medicine and all this stuff in and out. If that is disrupted, we have basically a time bomb. So that's the beginning, the bottom of the pyramid, you could say, and then that will go all the way up to the top where you have the highest amount of change, where there are people who are basically becoming eternalized consciousness, and they gain, right now there's the body and the mind, and we're primarily body for the most of humanity. It's mainly bodies that are doing things. If your mind is offset and in a problem, well, you feel very disrupted. But if your body gets, kind of cut in half or something, well, it's a big problem. It's a bigger problem than if you have a bad day. the shift is when there's more mind than there is body. And at that point, people can merge into different realities by using their thoughts, by using their mind, instead of having to be constrained or restricted to just one reality that we can consciously see, because we're already across those multiple realities. We just can't consciously see them because we're stuck to just one body consciousness, which is the ego. In that sense, though, say there was a problem and somebody has awakened this power that is in the DNA, that is in their mind, that is natural to the human, but is asleep right now, they could change the events of that problem by being happy. But by being happy and choosing, it could literally make a wall fall down. It could make what they need in that exact moment appear before them. And this is how it was in earlier times, and they would call it miracles. It's another way of describing it is a five-dimensional overlay, where what we don't have access to in a direct timeline, meaning the fruit on the tree is going to grow and then it's going to fall out and we can eat it. That's in our timeline. Well, what if right now I want a field of fruit and watermelons? Well, that would be a miracle because they're not planted here yet. But if you had access to a creationary power that could merge this timeline and world to one that we don't think exists yet, that is off in hyperspace, then you could bring that here. And the miracles is what that's called, because our spirit originates, our true feeling originates from beyond all of time, higher than the fifth dimension, where all the possibilities are as one. And our body and our ego, that's what's separated out here in the individual timelines that they come from the all-time, but as we are now, it's like you come from one and then they splay out and then they come back. Right now we're in the splayed out part, so there's a big gap between all these possibilities. If you need a big amount of change or food or whatever it is, money or power, all those things described as power, there's a universe between the other ones where that might be kept up in a different reality. So we have to build it here and then wait for it to come through. The realities scrunch back together, and the likelihood of having the power to pull a possibility that didn't seem possible before increases and increases. And what people don't know is that if our minds are all linked together, it increases not like this, but it goes like this. And anything that we can imagine, we can attain if we are all connected. And so all that's going to happen is people begin to connect and unify and create similarly together, but that also means those who are not connected are going to have these disturbances that we see now that are hidden, that these people don't know how to treat themselves and be after all of this is at the highest level. And the final enemy, it's written in the Bible in ancient texts, although the Bible is rewritten, but ancient texts talk about it, and they rewrote it because there's information in there that touches on all of this. It's multidimensionality. And that the last enemy is death. And that the weird thing is, the people who apparently created this, they told me they invented death. That they found out the systems like a computer, everybody lived in a happy land, if you will, and they coded into the computer with a team of magicians the ability to die and have disease, and they gave themselves immortality, and they made everybody else die and get sick and have disease, and they invented money and religion and lies and all these things. And I still don't know how I feel about that, but that's what it is. But the main idea is that all that is ending when all of this begins to complete itself. They also call it the end of days, the end of time. And this has also happened 6 times before, and it cannot happen any more than that because there's no more information to mess up. We already know. So if we let it happen again, we're lying to ourselves. But all that is can't lie to itself. All it does is be honest. What else would it do? It's all that is. And so we're reaching all that is at this time for our species, for our civilization, for our timeline. And there's teams that manage this and help people. And there's mean people that try and make it as worse as possible, because I guess they like that. And there's other things about how they live off of that suffering, but that's not really part of this aspect of the conversation. Excuse me.